Welcome to Recently Logged, blah blah blah.
Hello.
You're joining us today. I will talk in this voice the entire podcast.
I'm sure that won't get old.
It won't get old.
I don't think we've ever been ambitious enough to keep a bit going the entire episode, except for like the Princess Bride episode or something.
That was just interjections.
But yes, here we are. We're doing an episode during October.
My birthday month, the month of Halloween.
The month of Halloween, so we're doing spooky movies, and this week we're talking about an animated film from one of my favorite directors.
Yeah.
He's mostly known for his television work, but we're talking about one of his movies that came out in the early 2010s.
Hotel Transylvania.
Yeah. So I guess let's tell the people what they need to know about the movie.
What will they need to know? Hi, I don't know who that guy was. There was like a vampire in the studio. We kicked that guy out. But we're talking about Hotel Transylvania, which is a 2012 movie rated PG. It's an hour and 31 minutes. Its little IMDb description is Dracula, who operates a high-end resort away from the human world, goes into overprotective mode when a boy discovers the resort and falls for the Count's teenage daughter.
The man was living in overprotective mode.
Right. It's like to a comedic degree.
Right.
The cast features the voices of Adam Sandler, Kevin James, Andy Samberg, Selena Gomez, Steve Buscemi, who's this? Fran Drescher, Molly Shannon, David Spade.
Oh yeah.
CeeLo Green.
Dude, CeeLo Green's kind of
John
killing
Lovitz,
it.
and lots of people.
Yeah.
It is directed by, again, the aforementioned Jendy Tartakovsky. Let me pull up the... I even just says and others. Just tell me the others. Screenplay by Peter Banham, Robert Smigel.
There's a lot of screenwriters
Todd Durham,
on this.
Dan Hageman, and Kevin Hageman.
Yes.
Brothers, perhaps. But yeah, that's pretty cool. It was edited by Catherine Apple, who edited Luca and Onward. So that's fun.
Yeah. I'd say it's a well-edited movie.
Yeah, it's interesting because she didn't come back for the third one.
She was on 2, though?
She was on 2, yeah.
Nice. I haven't seen 2 in so long, honestly.
Music composed by Mark Mothersbaugh.
Mother's Bow.
Mother's Bow, I can read.
I was about to say, if there was a G at the end, which, I mean, without the H, I guess. But yeah, it's a good score, I say. I mean, he usually makes really fun scores.
Yeah,
so.
for sure. But honestly, that's like, what else do you need to know?
You need to know that it features Dracula.
Yeah.
Amongst many other monsters.
It features Mavy Wavy.
Mavy Wavy.
Yeah, I mean, I could, just giving some other context, like, obviously, we kind of grew up with this movie, so we're...
To a degree, yeah.
Yeah, to a degree.
It's about a decade old at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it was, like, this wasn't, like, quite our age group when we watched it. It was a little young, but still... Like, we did grow up watching these as they came out.
Yeah.
And I have pretty fond memories of watching this for the first time. And maybe that's why the nostalgia has blinded me away.
Perhaps.
But yeah, I think that's really all the basic facts we need to do.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy to understand movie.
Yeah, it's Hotel Transylvania.
But yeah, let's get into what we thought of the movie.
Let's do it. So, Robbie.
Yes, Micah.
What did you think, if you were to put it in a short, nice, simple, summarized manner? with some form of rating at the end. What did you think in a basic form?
Like a review
of Hotel Transylvania.
I think generally that it's a pretty great movie, which I didn't realize until after we just finished watching it is kind of a hot take.
Yeah, an unpopular opinion.
Yeah, it has like a 3.2 average, which isn't like, it's like only a 1 star off of what I would give it.
That's not bad.
But like generally a lot of the people that I follow don't really like it that much. And I don't know, I just have a really, I guess, a soft spot for it. Like, sure, it's a little like weirdly, I don't even know how I would describe it. It's just not like super well written or that emotionally engaging for me.
Yeah.
But I find it really, really funny and really inventive and really well directed and really well animated. Like, I just have a really good time watching it. It's got a great like creative spirit, and it's just constantly throwing like, I don't know, just stuff I find funny at me like every couple seconds. So I have a good time watching it. I love the vocal cast, and yeah, it's a good time. I like the character animation a lot too. That's
for sure.
Especially, there are very few 3D movies that look like Hotel Transylvania.
Yeah.
And I really admire that about it. And even the sequels, which I don't think are as good, you know, they still look pretty great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5, which is maybe a bit generous, but honestly, like, I had fun with it. I don't know. What else do you want from a movie, honestly? Especially one like this, where it's all, like, built around the mythos of different, like, classic monsters and stuff. It's very much like a kid's Halloween movie.
Yeah,
and I think it really succeeds at that. So, yeah, 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5.
Solid. What about you, Micah?
What did I think of Hotel Transylvania? Well, I feel like, I don't know, we're often in pretty similar boats on opinions on movies, and I roll in mostly the same direction with this. I think it's, for the most part, pretty fun, especially once you get past a lot of the character introductions, which for some reason are way more unfunny than a lot of, like, the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
I think it just has really memorable characters that I enjoy watching in all of the movies. Like, that's kind of what I think this series' strong point is just its characters, and that's including its vocal cast for those characters and its expressive animation and character designs. Like, these character designs are really close to almost like Illumination character designs, but it kind of shows the step up that this takes, that I could even make that comparison, but I feel like nobody would ever put those in like the same breath of animation degree, because this is just so well animated and all of it's so expressive and character driven.
Yeah, if you guys have ever seen Tartakovsky's other works, like something like Samurai Jack or the Powerpuff Girls, it actually comes through a lot in this. The way like he animates characters is just so expressive and really funny, and it has a really great snappiness to it.
Yeah.
And it just shines through so well in 3D, which I didn't expect.
Yeah, that's translated especially well through a lot of the direction and like camera work in the movie, which I wasn't expecting. The camera is so like in motion for a lot of this movie, and it, even if it doesn't have the strongest plot or always even the strongest jokes, I think it stays consistently pretty well paced and interesting, and there's always some fun character moment happening in each scene.
Exactly.
So yeah, I really enjoy it. Maybe I'm a dumb baby. Perhaps it's true.
A baby movie for babies.
If the song was better at the end, I would like the song at the end more. I don't understand why that is such a hated trope of kids' movies. It's fine. It's fun. It's for kids. And besides, it gave us so many great memes.
Oh my goodness.
This movie, man. But anyway, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
Very nice.
I think it's a pretty solid film. I don't know.
Like I would be really proud if I made this. I don't know. Like if I worked on this movie, I'd be like, yeah, man. It's good times.
But do you have a question to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Why not? What do you think generally of the ensemble in this movie? We praised like the vocal cast a bit in our basic like facts, but you mentioned that the characterization of like all of the ensemble characters is really fun.
Yeah.
Do you have like a favorite or just a general remark about like how that kind of cultivates a fun energy in the movie or anything?
Yeah, no, I do. I think the ensemble's pretty great. I think they can lack a lot in this movie, especially. I think it's very interesting, yet again, as this is a series that it kind of builds on those characters more. And maybe I have some of that held in my subconscious of like where these characters go. But even just this movie alone, I think makes most of its side characters really memorable in a fun way.
Right?
It makes them feel very like real. The entire world feels very real and lived in a weird way. Like you believe it as a reality, even as some things don't make sense on how the plot plays out. You're like, what? Oh, okay.
All right.
But like the characters, like the main, like Dracula's friend group is really funny to me.
Yeah.
Wayne is amazing. Maybe I'm crazy, but Wayne is like one of the best characters in animation that I've seen. just his really long snoot.
Oh my gosh.
And like his floppy face and the voice of Steve Buscemi and
So
his
funny,
outfit
dude.
and facial expressions. Almost every scene he's in, I think, is really funny. And most of the characters in this, they don't have much to do plot-wise. Like if we're talking side ensemble, it really is just Mavis, Johnny, and Dracula.
Yeah.
Those are like your only real characters. But for that, these other characters, I think, give a really nice like decoration and world building to everything. Even like Frank, which is not my favorite of any of them, is like really fun and adds some cool dimensions to what Johnny's up to.
Right.
And the Invisible Man has some fun jokes. And just the voice of the characters in general. I think my least favorite is the Mummy, but he's not allowed to do much that's fun.
I was about to say, I actually really like CeeLo Green's like energy that he has here, but he has the least amount of screen time out of any of them.
And consistently in the series, I think he's given like the least funny jokes out of anybody, which I think is kind of a shame. But still, they're all very distinct and memorable and bring something fun to the world and just to the pacing of jokes and scenes.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I've always kind of admired about like this series and specifically this movie is all of the like kind of weird mishmashing of like a bunch of different folklore and stuff like that, but it all comes together like really seamlessly somehow.
Yeah.
Like you can take a look at just about any of the characters and instantly know like what they're about. Like I don't know, like they're kind of simplistic, but like in a really like pleasant way.
Yeah, they're all very much like cartoonish caricatures, which again this brings
good.
This brings to life cartoons in a way that 3D animation so very rarely does, not even just in its animation itself, but in a lot of its writing. I mean, Tartakovsky is like, I don't know if you know his work, he's practically like one of the founding fathers of modern kids animation.
Yeah.
I mean, like the Cartoon Network.
Yeah, he did so much Cartoon Network work, and like he went on to work with like a bunch of Adult Swim shows, which again has a lot of acclaim.
Yeah, so bringing that kind of knowledge and energy to this movie is really, really impressive. Like the characters feel like how you want a cartoon character to feel when they're not that focused on. They have their bit, they're funny, they're expressive, they're memorable, and they mesh.
Exactly. You instantly know it's that whole like situation where if you have two well-written characters, you could just put them in any situation and have it play out like it, like you can understand how it would happen.
Exactly. Like and I honestly think you could do that with most of these side characters. Like you could grab Wayne and the Invisible Man and put them in a bunch of different situations, and I would have an idea of what they would do as characters, even though you get very little screen time with them.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just an aspect of the movie that I really appreciate and I think makes it a lot more fun when I'm actually watching it, because that's one of the things that I love, like when I'm just watching the movie, is all of the like little background gags and like fun interactions between all of them. I just think it's fun. It's a fun environment.
Yeah, you can tell so much love was put into this concept and idea.
Right.
And even the ability, and I actually wanted to bring this up, eventually I didn't, might as well do it now.
Yeah, might as well.
But even like the idea of the fact that they take the time to try and work, it's a little ham-fisted in there, but a decent attempt at a pretty like, emotional core to the movie, to Dracula's character, to make him like, by the time you get through all of Dracula's stuff, even though it very much comes out of nowhere, I think that's one of its big issues and how it lands, is it's comedy silly movie, and then Dracula's like, but there was a dark history and stuff like that, and it just kind of is weird for what they're doing. I think they could have done that in a little bit of a smoother way tonally. But once you finish up Dracula's story and you get so into like Adam Sandler's performance and kind of what he's doing,
crazy here, dude.
and even with the opener with him and Mavis, like they do a really good job of making you understand Dracula, which is really interesting because again, I think he's like the most comedically overprotective and controlling parent in a movie.
I was thinking during the first maybe like 10 minutes of this, like while I was watching it this time, I was like, if this wasn't like, if they somehow didn't make Dracula this likable, this would be an insufferable movie.
Yeah, which I think honestly that's one of the reasons I don't like some of the later installments is because Dracula isn't inherently like written in the same way. He's written kind of different. He has different character conflicts and he can be kind of unlikable in later movies.
Exactly, yeah, because he's doing like a kind of objectively awful things throughout the entire movie, but like between Adam Sandler's performance and like the characterization of like his friendships, his like past friendships in the world, and like his passion for, you know, his daughter and everything in his hotel, like we empathize with him really, really fast, which is really good.
Yeah, and like just the way that Johnny is worked into Dracula's character arc, I think is really impressive because Johnny is like the funniest character ever. That is the one character in this movie that I think like to memory every single joke from Johnny works.
Right.
Like I would not say that of any other character in this movie, no. I don't think, but all of Johnny related jokes are bangers every single time. He's so funny. He's easily like one of the best things to come out of this entire series.
You know, it's funny. I think I saw a couple reviews when I was like scrolling through it, like on Letterboxd for this movie that they were talking about like why did Johnny and Dracula have more chemistry.
Right. Well, I was about to get to that because, like, I mean, effectively, Dracula is the main character of this. Mavis isn't. Mavis gets actually surprisingly little amount of screen time. I don't think that's a flaw of the movie because, again, Dracula is more your main character. Yeah. But because of that, Johnny is like he is the thing that changes Dracula's emotional state, not Mavis. I
mean, he's very directly like a foil for Dracula.
Exactly.
Like, that's his whole thing.
Dude, the scenes with them together are really so much fun. And they endure you just as much to Johnny as Dracula. Like the scenes where like Dracula kind of drops his very controlling, grumpy mindset, even just in little bits here and there. Like I love just the fact that like nobody can like handle Johnny's pure just pleasantness to be around. Nobody can hold up any like grudge or grumpiness around him.
You know, this is kind of like a Paddington movie when you think about it.
It almost is. That's a really weird thing to say, but Jonathan is like this extremely positive force of nature that comes in and changes somebody's life.
Well, yeah, it's really interesting because he's meant to be like this beacon of hope for humanity, like
and for like the younger generation.
Yeah, like Dracula's like lost all hope that humanity could ever change or ever love like monsters, and then Johnny is meant to be like this ultra wholesome, happy, like understanding guy.
Yeah, and it works so well through like the writing of his character being genuinely really funny and Andy Samberg being Andy Samberg. Like there are so many fun jokes that are also really fantastic characterization. Like after Dracula does his whole like I will suck your blood and turn you into a whoopee cushion thing, and Mavis is like come with me, and he's like no I can't, and she's like it'll be fun, and he's just immediately like okay. Comes with it. Like moments like that are really funny and also immediately get you into that mindset of like what Johnny is doing as a character.
Right. I feel like we need like a stoner comedy prequel with Johnny on his globe trotting.
That would be I don't want to give studios more ideas to just keep pumping out the same series because we never needed a Hotel Transylvania 4 and that happened.
No.
But Johnny prequel movie would be amazing. Probably.
Hopefully.
He's just such a fun character to watch.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, though, do you have a favorite scene or sequence in the movie? Because that's an interesting question. I was thinking about that while we were watching it.
There's a lot of like really fun like little vignettes near the middle of just like Dracula and Johnny like doing random stuff, like setting up for the party and everything. It's probably something in the I'm trying to think of like a specific one,
I was about
though.
to say, because it's a very much like cartoon comedy.
Yeah.
A lot of the scenes are
They go
exactly
by
that.
very
They're little
fast.
vignettes of
Yeah.
like, here's this set comedic set piece, and then move on.
Yeah, they're very quick, which I mean works to its advantage. I think probably the last like 20 minutes of the movie are the weakest part, so I probably wouldn't
Yeah.
pull something from that. But I don't know. The introduction scene for Johnny is really funny, actually. I might go
Yeah.
with that. I might go
Yeah.
with that. As weird as some of the jokes are in that sequence, like I think just generally like the scene
Dude,
of
that
him in the
sponge
broom
joke
closet.
before that.
my
What is
gosh.
going on?
But yeah, no, I think that would probably be my favorite.
Yeah, no, I get that. I was about to say, like, honestly, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but like that sequence of Jonathan going around to all of the different monster activities, and they're like,
The boring
B-51.
Oh my gosh. The bingo bit is like the funniest thing ever.
And him coming into all of those situations, and you get like all sorts of ones, like the dinner and like all the different like. And again, it's kind of
that montage is
kind
really
of a
funny.
big chunk, and it's not like montagey.
Yeah.
But like that entire sequence of middle chunk where Johnny is first like getting to know all of the like monsters and getting to have really fun bits with a lot of them.
Yeah.
I think is really great. It's just fun and funny, and that's what this movie needs to be.
Exactly. Yeah, I think at its most enjoyable, it's just like dumb jokes, like dumb little bits with each of the different characters.
Yeah, maybe I'm crazy, but this is like a very direct continuation of like the style, humor, and comedy of like the Looney Tunes, but actually brought to life well. Like thinking of something like one of like the Space Jam movies. For some reason, those do a really bad job at bringing to life what makes Looney Tunes, and not even specifically Looney Tunes, obviously. Hotel Transylvania is not very Looney Tunes-esque.
No.
But that kind of cartoon, like a true cartoon
Yeah.
style.
Which this very much is. It's very absurd and like wacky
Yeah.
and like kind of
For
surreal almost.
For some reason, something like
sometimes.
Space Jam does a really, really bad job at understanding how to adapt that into
Well,
like a different setting.
the Looney Tunes characters, they're meant to be stuck into a very small narrative framework, and when you blow it, like you give it like a huge ensemble and make this rather large long story where not everybody has a clear like want
Yeah.
or like goal in each individual scene. It gets very muddy very fast.
Right, it's very difficult to balance a cartoon-esque movie because of the nature of that style of cartoon. Like you said, they're supposed to. If you
They're
think
supposed to
back
have,
of
like,
any,
one goal.
if you think back of any Looney Tunes, part of what makes their comedy work so well is that they're simple, they're concise. Most Looney Tunes shorts, the entire thing is one joke, like extended to its full potential, and then it ends.
Yeah.
Like that's literally 90% of them. They're not complex. It's just this scene that they thought of where then this could happen. And sometimes that makes for like a masterpiece, like what is that called?
One Froggy Evening.
Yeah, One Froggy Evening, where it's just like the funniest thing in the world, and it's
Yeah.
literally just the frog won't sing in front of anyone else but him.
Right.
And like that style is really hard to blend into a movie, especially a movie that tries to have a very traditional plot, which Hotel Transylvania kind of tries to do.
Yeah, it has. I mean, it just has like at its very core a very basic like overprotective parent lies to child. Their lie is revealed. They learn their lesson. Blah blah blah. At the end.
but with that, I think that actually kind of benefits that because the writing of the plot, as you mentioned, I think is kind of weak. It's not. It's whatever.
It's serviceable.
shaky. It's shaky at best. It's not like bad.
No.
But it's not like memorable or notable in that aspect. But what I think is notable is that it could be so much worse so easily.
Yeah.
This plot could suck, especially to me personally, because I am a certified hater of liar reveal plots.
I feel like anyone who's listened to the podcast,
Exactly, if you-
especially for like our animated movies,
because
they
it's
should
such
know.
it's such a leaned on trope in animation, and I hate that it is because it's always like the dumbest thing and usually revolves around stupid stuff that just wouldn't happen in a live action movie because people realize that it would be dumb if it did because they're like, oh, a person is just right there. Why wouldn't you just talk to them?
Right.
With animation, they're like, oh, but Shrek wouldn't go talk to Fiona because he's Shrek.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. That's my least favorite part of Shrek. But yeah, it's such a lean done trope, and this has that too, but because it operates on such kind of a cartoony style, so much of it isn't that focused on the plot.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to the lie reveal, which in here is especially like kind of, it seems like it should bother me even more because you have Johnny going off on the whole "no, I hate monsters" thing, but that's like dropped so quickly.
Yeah,
it's such like a snappy thing that isn't dragged on because they want to get to the point where they can have more jokes. And you know, somebody may be like, I don't know, like I feel like a common criticism of this would be like, oh, they're undercutting their emotional moments with humor, but it's not even that. I think it rests long enough. There's a beat with it.
Yeah, they don't do that, which I really actually admired, you know?
Yeah, it's not like Dracula's like, oh, my wife was murdered and that's why I'm overprotective, and Johnny was like, oh, funny bro.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, it's or like he's in the middle of the story and Jonathan interrupts to be like, whoa.
Yeah, like, no, that's something I really admired this time around. I was like, oh, like they could go in for a joke here. I'm glad they're not. They're trying to give as much weight as they can to the drama of the movie.
Yeah, but they also recognize that the drama isn't the focus, and I think that's a really nice balance to where you're not stuck in any kind of melodrama between the characters. The next time Mavis sees Johnny, which again is after Dracula's little change of heart, they're just fine together. Like they're just like, yeah, he was gonna kill me if I didn't say that. So it I don't know, I think that's a really notable thing for how it plays out, even if it's not the strongest thing on its own.
Yeah. To your Looney Tunes point, I just had like a little thing that I wanted to mention. I think it's really funny how most of like basically everything but the final little like section of the movie is just like little almost like Looney Tunes-esque scenes where you just have like a handful of characters like doing one thing.
Yeah.
Which like the definition of a scene is like is like a tiny little like movie.
They took a couple of characters and they had them interact in a way that progressed the plot.
But yeah, I just think like the way they go about writing like bits from scene to scene is really admirable because it does feel kind of reminiscent of like something like a Looney Tunes, like especially with a lot of the scenes between Drac and Johnny, and like any time Dracula's hanging out with like all of his buddies and everything. Like it's a very straightforward way to go about writing comedy, but it's very effective here.
Yeah,
I think.
it feels honestly like that it leans similar towards a lot of like I think Disney movies that came out at the time, that I could see them kind of approaching all of a similar kind of humor, but one of the things like we've mentioned that I think really elevates that away from just being very simple, like I don't know why, but it comes to mind like that Frozen tries to have kind of similar written comedic scenes to this movie, even though that's a much less comedic movie. It's much more focused on its plot.
Yes.
But thinking about the comedic scenes from something like Frozen or even Tangled, another movie came out around the same time. They have the same kind of feeling of the way they go about writing their scenes, but so much about the actual specific character work and especially the animation and the wackiness that Hotel Transylvania always tries to bring. Like they will go out of their way to punctuate a comedic beat instead of going out of their way to like have the plot work into the comedic beats.
Yeah, I mean Tangled and especially Frozen, I would even hesitate to call Frozen a dramedy. I was gonna say Tangled is much more of a dramedy, which Hotel Transylvania is like just a straight up comedy.
I was about to say the only that's a like it's a light comparison just in terms of they're definitely different genre movies. Their goals are different, but I don't know if it makes sense. It makes sense in my mind that like if you isolate to just a comedic moment or scene, it has a very strongly similar vibe to the like that was just like kind of the humor and animation I get what you're saying, at the time in movies. But I think this captures something really different out of it because of what its priorities are.
Yeah. You know, I think it's interesting like thinking back to when this came out, because we get this little like section during the closing credits where like you have all the characters like 2D animated, and it kind of made me like, it always makes me wonder, like, what would this movie look like in 2D, you know?
Well, honestly,
like, would it be better
I think it
or
would be
worse?
very similar to that style that those credits are in, because that's a very Tartakovsky style
Yeah, exactly.
animation at
Yeah.
the end.
Well, and again, all of the art direction and like concept art and stuff is very, very much his visual style and the way he goes about drawing like heads and bodies and stuff. It's all very reminiscent of his other work.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, I just think I thought it was interesting because it highlights a bit of the like actual atmosphere that we get in like the hotel a bit. Which you wouldn't really have in a 2D movie.
Well, not in the
same way.
Not in the style that Tartakovsky does. He has a very interesting style when it comes to his 2D animation that works extremely well for cartoons, like on television cartoons where they don't have a huge budget to invest in like background paintings and stuff like that. And it'd be very interesting to see him working on something similar to this. I need to watch Primal, but even then, like all of his stuff is very like minimal in his style.
Yeah, all the stuff I've seen from him, like Powerpuff Girls, half the time the backgrounds are just like colors with like a flat ground.
And again, for something like Powerpuff Girls, that came out of necessity because they hardly had a budget for that show.
Yeah.
But even something like Samurai Jack in later seasons where they do have a budget, that's still not like the location atmosphere is never really what's focused on. And I think the 3D animation of Hotel Transylvania does actually work pretty well for what they're going for. I think it gives the film a nice physical location kind of feeling.
Yeah, because I thought about that. I'm like, well, it's a weird aspect of the movie that I like hadn't acknowledged before, but like would vanish if you did it in 2D. Like just the more kinetic 3D space like blocking that we get in this, which is actually pretty admirable, and the editing does lend to that a bit as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of movie. I was about to say there's a lot of things like, again, like the quote unquote camera work of the movie, which you could obviously replicate with 2D, but it would be to a very different effect.
Yeah, I was about to say it would feel very different.
Stuff like, even again, that scene that you mentioned when Johnny is first like comes into the hotel, there's in that scene specifically, the camera does a lot of different specifically like camera things.
Exactly. Yeah, there's stuff that I haven't ever seen in Tartakovsky's other work, like just movements he wouldn't attempt in 2D because like they don't really look like, it doesn't work as well visually.
Yeah, so I think as movies, like, because a lot of movies even now just come out in 3D just because
it's
like
popular.
Well, that and like that because it took over and was the new thing. There's just not that many people who do movie professional 2D anymore. Like it's an unfortunately
imagine
pretty
Elemental
small industry.
in 2D. That would have been cool, actually.
A lot of movies don't really feel like they justify their need for 3D. I feel like you've got to work for an animation. Like an animation, you can do whatever medium you want.
Yeah.
But I do legitimately think different mediums can bring stories to life in a really specific, unique way. You know, like something like The Adventures of Prince Ahmed would not be better if it was anything else. But it's like, if it was like the puppet. What is that style called?
Like cutout. Yeah,
backlit puppet work. I don't know. But like that's part of what makes it work. I think the story is told actually really effectively through that art form.
Yeah.
Whereas something like Watership Down, there's a pretty direct example of how it just does not work as well in 3D animation. It's not made for that. It is a very storybook thing that works in that medium extremely well. And Watership Down, the original movie, is one of the most beautifully animated movies I've ever seen.
That movie's so good.
And it uses its medium to the full effect of creating its mythos and its atmosphere.
Yeah.
And so much of its kind of wavy world where the world is often blending to the perspective of the rabbits. Like stuff like that comes to mind are like the power lines and how they view those as kind of these morphed things because they don't know what they are.
Yeah.
And the animation really clearly and emotionally expresses that to you just from the perspective of these tiny creatures.
Yeah.
And you couldn't bring that to life through anything else. You couldn't bring that to life. And I'm going off on a long tangent
right.
about animation, but I really do genuinely love animation. It's one of my favorite things. But you couldn't bring to life something like even Curse of the Were-Rabbit through something other than claymation. Like, you know, so many of these medium choices matter to what they're doing. And I think 3D animation has its place, but because it was the new thing on the block through the 2010s, and we were finally like perfecting it to something that actually looks good in the 2010s, it was just, and still kind of is, what people default go to. You know, if it's a Disney movie or a Pixar movie, well, Pixar, it makes sense. That's what they did. But if it's a Disney movie, it's a DreamWorks movie. If it's an animated movie coming out now.
I just remembered that Ghibli did one.
Ghibli, yeah. They even did one. And like, it's just...
It did not need to be in 3D.
I do not like 3D anime. It's the style does not work well, in my opinion. But again, they do it just because that seems like the thing that is popular to do, not because it really benefits the story they're trying to tell.
Yeah.
It can often take away in a lot of ways. I can think of even some Pixar movies I think would majorly be benefited if delivered in a different medium.
Yeah.
And this is one of the few movies that I feel like this is a good medium for it. Like, I wouldn't switch this medium. I think it works well in 3D, whereas something like even Tangled or Frozen, you could see how they could be brought to life. Like a lot of the fairy tale style things from Disney, you could see how they could be brought to life in 2D animation in a much more timeless way.
It's funny because Tangled Ever After exists.
Yeah, and I mean, Tangled Ever After has got a budget of a toothpick, but even it has a really strong style. I love how Tangled Ever After looks. I'm not the biggest fan of the show, but I still really think it's memorable. It's almost more memorable than how the 3D movie looks.
Yeah, no, it's funny whenever someone like mentions Tangled, like those character designs pop into my head first, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, no, that's the TV show.
So yeah, long tangent about animation because it's something that I genuinely care about a lot. Yeah. But I think this is actually a really great use of 3D animation. I actually mentioned while we were watching the film, I was like, this aged well.
Yeah,
like just looking at
it's aged pretty great. Honestly,
if they're sure. Again, this came out in what, 2012?
Yeah, it's over a decade old.
By 2012, there were like a lot of good looking and 3D animated movies. We had gotten it down to looking good, but there's still a lot of like kind of stilted stuff. Even in, again, something like Tangled, there's a lot of kind of weird stilted animation moments where things just haven't aged quite as well because they're constantly moving towards kind of, because realism was kind of the priority.
I was about to say back in the early 2010s, really they were just pushing for photorealism at that point because nobody had really done it like super well at that point.
Yeah, and that constant push towards photorealism led pretty directly to some things aging really poorly. Like, let's look at some movies that came out at that time. I was pulling some up. So the same year we had, Wreck-It Ralph is not a good example because that's also stylized well, and that movie's aged pretty well.
By necessity, yeah, because they wanted to do like very faithful video game designs and stuff.
But something like Brave or Rise of the Guardians or Madagascar 3, those all came out that year.
Rise of the Guardians, dude.
Those movies they've definitely aged.
Yeah.
You can definitely tell they were early 2010s movies.
My goodness. Rise of the Guardians is like tethered. It's like ball and chain trapped in that era of animation.
Versus, Rise of the Guardians and Madagascar 3 are much stronger examples. Brave looks pretty good.
Yeah, Brave looks pretty good.
It still has some aged stuff in it. But compare that to like, so if Wreck-It Ralph, Hotel Transylvania, even some of the claymation ones that came out that year. Man. Claymation never ages. Or even like Ernest and Celestine came out that year.
Yeah.
Like there's just so many better things that you can do that won't age them like that. And I think it's really impressive that this is like, I looked at this and, if it wasn't for some of the humor, I wouldn't be like, that's a 2010s movie, or like an early 2010s movie.
Yeah, and this if I'm not mistaken, this is pretty early on in like Sony Animation's like catalog, right? I think so.
Let me double check that.
Fact check for Sony Pictures Animation. I don't know like what their catalog. They have like such a varied catalog.
Well, the thing is, Sony got into animation in a really weird way. Like their first stuff was terrible. At least like their first foray into animation at all was Open Season, perhaps the ugliest movies to ever come out.
My goodness, those do look kind of bad, yeah.
And they just have this wacky, weird thing where they would do like open season, and then they do Surf's Up, one of the most memorable animated movies to come out of the 2000s, and then like more of that open season, and then Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, one of the most memorable movies, like animated movies to come out of the 2000s.
Yeah.
And they would just kind of flop back and forward. But yeah, this was relatively early on in their career. They had just done like the Smurfs stuff.
Yeah.
They had done some Aardman stuff, open season, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Surf's Up. So they had some experience.
This is sandwiched between like the Smurfs movies. I forgot about that.
But this was still when they weren't really like quite respected as a full-on animation studio, you know, like people really liked Surf's Up and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and even Arthur Christmas, but like they were like, yeah, it's the open season studio, and they didn't really drop that reputation super much until Spider-Verse.
Yeah, dude, there's like the Emoji Movie. Oh gosh,
The Star, Peter Rabbit.
Yeah, dude, they must have been like, so there must have been like a collective sigh of relief when Spider-Verse did well.
Right, the Angry Birds movie. Like they put out all of this stuff, and then they have like Spider-Verse, Mitchell's versus the Machines.
Oh my goodness.
Across the Spider-Verse.
Right, they're now like reining in a new like wave of 3D animation. It's crazy.
It's wild to see from a studio. But hey, I like to think that Hotel Transylvania is partially responsible for leading them down that direction. It made them a lot of money.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a reason we got 4 Hotel Transylvania movies.
Yeah, it's such a good, like you said, it's such a good like kids Halloween movie.
Yeah,
that's one of the really most admirable things about the movie, despite all of the rest of the stuff, which I think is pretty good. It's not like great or like that memorable. But when you watch this movie, it's kind of just like, yeah.
I think it's a really like just sweet, like kids gothic movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're like, that's Halloween. That's fun.
Yeah, like it's a good enough time that like I can admire it for all of the things I love about it and kind of minimize some of its more like weird or like dated things, you know? I don't know. It's a really fun movie. I have a really good time watching it.
Yeah, so do I. Do you have anything else you want to add, though?
Yeah, not really. I feel like we've covered a lot of the things that I really would feel like I'd have to cover for Hotel Transylvania. Like, it's not that complex of a movie, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, what can I mention? Like, there's quite a bit towards the beginning of, like, very lowest common denominator, like, oh, butts, poop, pee.
I don't know. You could do
like
a lot
that.
worse.
But yeah, even then you could do a lot worse than what this is presenting. And I feel like people have like, I don't know, like I don't want to be like one of those kind of people because I'm a big advocate for adult animation. I always have been. I want animation to be more than just viewed
Primal,
as baby content.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like people are pretty like mean towards just pleasantly fine kid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sure, there's a lot of poop jokes, but kids find that stuff funny. Like they genuinely do. I work in an elementary school. Kids find poop jokes funny.
I mean, as long as there's actually like a good punchline attached to it, like I think they're funny, you know?
And like, you know, you can have stuff like that in a movie without it being the death of cinema.
Yeah.
And you can have stuff like, again, like I don't understand why it's so hated to have like a dance or a song at the end of a movie. Like whatever. This is a goofy movie. This is not... I can't imagine being mad at it in this movie. They have a plot justification, and even then, this is not like a plot-heavy movie.
I love that, like, Dracula not singing with his friends, like, is a plot beat, and he develops.
Right.
By the end of the movie, he's finally out on stage singing with everyone.
Exactly. It's very funny, and I don't know, like... I don't know, maybe just like don't be as stuck up about kids stuff, like whatever. I obviously am one to advocate to be critical towards anything, but you have to be critical for what it's trying to be.
I mean, honestly, like I've seen this movie like 4 or 5 times now, and I'm still like I would still rewatch it, you know? Like it's still something that I find comedic value and like genuinely creative value like in it. Like I get inspired.
I think it's got a good heart to it,
Yeah.
and even like I just kind of admire it for what it's doing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's impressive. I think it's funny, and it's just like a cozy little Halloween movie.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
not my favorite, not my go-to, but something I would go to anytime.
Exactly. Yeah, you just turn it on. You know, have a good laugh once in a while.
But again, I give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Give it a 4 out of 5. Solid film, in my opinion. My rather biased opinion.
Yeah.
I guess
I was about to
opinions
say,
are
Robbie,
like,
all opinions are biased. Like it
that's
would have
the
to
whole
be
thing.
for it to be like a truly like quote unquote biased opinion. I feel you'd have to have like worked on the movie.
That'd be funny. I mean, if you want me to work on a Tartakovsky movie, call me up because I will do it.
You know,
I will learn how to animate.
Hey man, Adult Swim is pretty close to us.
Heck yeah, dude.
Just go work at Adult Swim.
Oh, he has a new movie actually coming out soon that I'm kind of excited for. But
yeah, just go get a job at Adult Swim.
There you go. Easy peasy.
Yeah. All right, let's move into the What We Watched segment. All right, so the What We Watch segment, for those of you who do not know or maybe new to the podcast, is a fun little thing we do at the end where we talk about all of the movies we've seen since our last episode. We give our brief thoughts, opinions, ratings, and we have fun talking about what we've been watching.
Whoa.
That's crazy.
What a radical idea.
And Robbie, when was our last episode released?
Our last episode released on October 3rd, 2023.
Wow. That's crazy. So that means we are going to be going from the 3rd forward to now.
To modern day.
And I think I'm kicking us off for this.
Yeah.
So on the 3rd, I watched, and we've been kind of doing a spooky season watch. We always do during October, where we try to pretty much keep almost exclusively like Halloween or horror themed movies. So we are checking stuff off, and I finally got to Gerald's Game. Mike Flanagan, kind of the movie that kicked off a lot of his later career for what people know him as.
Yeah.
Very interesting Stephen King adaptation. It's definitely memorable. It's doing a lot for kind of a low budget that you can tell it has. And I've never read Gerald's Game, but it, I don't know, it's really interesting and engaging, and I think the performances are really fun. Bruce Greenwood especially is very memorable in it. And yeah, it's simple, and I don't think as fun as it could be because of that. Like, I don't think the story is, I don't know, maybe it's better in a book. I imagine it would be actually better in a book, translating something like this, where it's just a character stuck to a thing for the entire movie. Like, that's literally, she's just in the bed the whole movie.
That doesn't strike me as a super cinematic premise, but
yeah,
you know.
it's definitely difficult to translate that well, and I think Mike Flanagan definitely has the chops to approach that better than most people could. And I was engaged. I thought it has a really interesting emotional core and some pretty like uncomfy stuff. It's memorable for what it does, and some great character work with that. It's definitely an emotional movie. But then its ending also sucks. But I feel like that's pretty in the spirit of Stephen King. Like, I don't think Flanagan could have helped that really. Like, Stephen King's just terrible at writing endings. He really is. So at the end of the day, it's just kind of this weird movie that I wouldn't really jump to watch again. But I think it's doing something genuinely interesting and creative for what it has.
I caught the last 10 minutes of it, and I was like, this is kind of weird.
The ending sucks. But I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
Very nice.
Then what did we watch, Remy?
Then we sat down and we watched Paranormal Activity.
Whoa.
Very surprisingly influential movie to modern horror.
Whoa, there's Paranormal Activity.
Kicked off a whole weird found footage trend in the late 2000s.
Right, and I like found footage horror, but not like this.
Dude, I love found footage.
This is not my cup of tea. I was kind of bored with this movie. I agree with this one review where it's like unpopular opinion, there wasn't enough paranormal activity.
I don't know, like there's stuff happening, you know.
Vaguely.
At night. Like people, there's doors opening.
I don't know. I was never that engaged with its plot or its scares. And sometimes it's really fun. And I think the characters themselves are pretty interesting. Mika is the worst and gives my name a bad name. But like he still is like a fun character to watch play out. So I think his characters are surprisingly a strong point, but I was just never that engaged with what the movie was doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually praised in my review that like it kind of works as like a lot of its romantic like more comedic moments work really well, and it like help engage me a lot more with the horror stuff that happens because you actually like care about these people. So like good characterization. I think I get really scared. I'm like really scared of the dark and home invasion, so like Paranormal Activity is a very very effective premise for me. So
I like the concept of home invasion stuff, like especially supernatural home invasion. Cause it's like, oh, you can't trust your own bedroom.
Exactly. Yeah. But what's scarier than that?
But at the same time, I'm just like, yeah, whatever, guys. Just I don't know. Don't be an idiot, Mika. And I feel like things would have been fine.
Yeah, I don't know. The ending's a bit weird, but like I have a lot of fun with the horror sequences at night. And I think generally, like, the characterization is engaging enough that I have a good time with, like, a lot of the more mundane scenes, too, you know?
What about the subtext, right?
The subtext. Yeah, there's a really troubling subtext that I'm trying to remember. I think Screening Notes brought up in his review. He's not a fan of Paranormal Activity. He's talking about how Katie, like, kind of... like you can very easily read it as like an allegory for mental health and
and like finding out that somebody has like a mental illness or medical condition that you didn't know about until you moved in with them.
Exactly. You could very easily read the movie that way. That isn't how I interpreted it when I watched it. So I was like, that wasn't like something that crossed my mind. But when I read that, I was like, oh shoot, dude.
And it's a pretty blessed story.
Yeah,
if it is read that way.
Very troubling ending as well. But I don't know, that's not what I got out of it. Like I see it very much more as like a physical illness allegory, which I think is a lot more compelling, even though the ending still doesn't really make any sense with that. But that's how I kept relating to a lot of the beats in it, and like I don't know, I found the emotional core of it to work pretty well. Like maybe it's just me. I don't know.
I was not enthused, but it wasn't bad. I gave it a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, we watched the alternate ending for it as well. I don't know which one I'd prefer.
It wasn't really any that. Like, it wasn't really that.
It's not substantially that different. But I gave it a 4 out of 5. It scared me. I had a good time watching it, and I would watch it again.
There you go. That's all you need, I guess.
Yeah.
Then we headed out to the theater. Our local cinema is doing a fun thing where each Wednesday this month they're playing, well, almost each Wednesday they're playing, I was going to say a classic horror movie, but that's not true. The last Wednesday they're doing the new It. So I guess just every Wednesday they're doing a Stephen King movie.
Yeah.
And this Wednesday... it was Christine. And we had never seen Christine.
Yeah, we had never seen John Carpenter's Christine.
Very weird movie. It's very weird.
I feel like every John Carpenter movie you can be like, it's weird.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, Halloween and The Thing, which are my other Carpenter movies, are not that weird. I mean, if you get into like The Fog or Dark Star.
The Fog is weird.
They're definitely weird.
Yeah.
But like, Christine, man, Stephen King is weird. That's the real thing. There's a lot that I like about this movie. I think it's got some really strong sequences with Christine, especially. I wish she was in the movie more.
Keith Gordon
doing fun things. Yeah, Keith Gordon is really, really memorable.
He's kind of killing it here.
He's giving great stuff, but like I feel like the actual plot and pacing and writing and like arcs that characters take throughout the film are pretty slow and unengaging and kind of weirdly played out. Like I really thought this would be a pretty straightforward movie to do in terms of how
you wanted it to have more drive,
like more drive as like even like a horror movie, but it's practically just like a bunch of people being like hanging out for most of the movie being like, Christine,
I think it's so
she's
funny.
ruining my life.
I think it's so funny that like half of the movie, maybe over half of the movie, it's just like random scenes of like people either being like, "Oh, we really need to check in on our buddy
Arnie, what's Arnie
yeah, what's up
to?
with Arnie?" Or Arnie being like, "Oh my, it's just me and my car versus the world," you know?
Yeah, I feel like to a kind of
That's like most of the
to
movie.
a kind of disappointing degree, in my opinion. A lot of this movie is like a lot of the actual plot of this movie is told to you and not shown.
Yeah, which is kind of disappointing. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And that may be just because of like it's nature of an adaptation or what. Like I don't know, maybe there's just really not that much to the Christine story. But that being said, again, I think its characters are really strong. I think there's a lot of funny Carpenter-isms, like just the goofy old guy who has insane line deliveries and stuff like that.
Dude,
Very
he's
Carpenter.
so funny.
And like again, Christine as a character is really fascinating. I wish we got more of her. And
Right.
like there are scenes like the show me scene is really cool.
Well, it's I think like at the bone of Christine, if you will, the bad to the bone of Christine. Like Christine works as a really fun like manifestation of like toxic masculine love.
Yeah.
And like that I find really, really compelling, and that's what like kind of pulls me through the whole movie. Even though like it is like kind of boring and slow and not much actually happens until the finale.
I was about to say, so there's some great stuff in there,
Yeah.
but it's not overall as good as I would like it to be. And I had just watched Videodrome recently. I talked about that in our last episode.
Yeah.
And after watching something like Videodrome, where it has like not even that similar of a concept, but like, you know, guy, object, living,
object.
you know, Arnie very directly like falls in love with Christine. I feel like just thinking about that, I wouldn't want Cronenberg to adapt Christine. Very concerning what would happen after that.
You'd get Titan.
You'd get Titan. But like at the same time, somebody as creative and interesting as Cronenberg doing something like Videodrome or even like The Fly, and just like Cronenberg's work in general is so much more engaging and well written than this. That's just what I thought of.
I think it's very funny that Arnie basically is Ken from the Barbie movie.
Literally. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
Give it a 4 out of 5. I dug the atmosphere and I dug the flaming cars, so that was enough for me.
Then we have a shout out to the fact that we finished. We had been watching it for a while. I had kind of forced Robbie into watching it.
Yeah.
But it was the anniversary of the start, so we decided to finish it. But we finished Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Yeah, my first time ever watching it.
Yeah.
One of the most acclaimed and like well-known anime, at least in America. I don't know how.
One of my favorite pieces of art.
Yeah, Neon Genesis. What is there to say about it that hasn't already been said?
It's so massive and emotional and extremely well weaved and complex and really sincere.
It's very Freudian. It really is like a really apt way to describe it, but it's a very vulnerable and beautiful piece of work.
This is the most Freudian thing I've ever seen. What do you mean?
Like, I love how I think like any sort of example of Freudian writing, like I feel like you have to bring up Neon
I was about
Genesis.
to say any other, like there's some jokes that's like, oh, that's so Freudian. No, that's a joke unless you've watched Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Like literally you can spell out directly from Sigmund Freud's theories like exactly what is wrong with each of these characters.
Literally, it's very funny.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it somehow like works so well.
Yeah.
I love what the show is doing, and like I cry my eyes out at the end of the show. It's so lasting and memorable to me and impactful, and I think an important story to be shared with young adults.
Yeah,
especially ones who,
it's really a good like story for young adults,
especially ones that struggle with similar things that Hideka did. Like this is like his heart poured out onto a screen for kind of congratulating people for just getting through the same kind of stuff he's had to get through.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I think is really commendable. And it also is really wacky, fun Bible fan fiction.
Yeah, I was about to say Dead Sea Scrolls fanfic goes crazy for some reason. But yeah, like it's a very like existence affirming piece, which I can see why so many people like have latched onto it for that. And like it, I don't know, it's really beautiful. It's got like such striking animation.
It's got some of the most memorably animated things I've ever seen.
Yeah, and like it's world building, the way it builds out its interpersonal relationships and like the overarching narrative of it. It's very impressive. It's like a just a monstrous piece of work, and I really enjoyed it. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's again hands down one of my favorite things I've ever seen. Like it's just
Yeah.
Especially with End of Evangelion, which we haven't watched yet.
I haven't watched it.
Which I really want to show Robbie End of Evangelion, because the show is very much incomplete without it. But End of Evangelion's one of the most beautiful movies. Like hands down, one of the best movies ever made, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's honestly the biggest criticism of Neon Genesis that I have, is that it feels incomplete, because like the story finally ramps up and then it just kind of cuts to the end.
They skip about 4 episodes worth of stuff.
Yeah.
To continue on.
Which, like, the ending still works, and it is still, like, the catharsis of it still works and everything, but you just, I don't know.
The congratulations scene.
Yeah, Robbie. But it just doesn't, it's not doing everything that I want it to do, like, everything that it's promised me. And I need to watch the End of Evangelion, because I have a feeling I'm really going to enjoy it.
Anyway, Neon Genesis, 5 out of 5 for me.
Neon Genesis gets a big thumbs up. I like it.
Anyway, I have to go off on that. That's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
Then on the 5th, what did we watch? Oh, wait. Before that, I watched Something Without You on the 5th.
Whoa.
On the 5th, before I watched Something With You, the 80s Pet Cemetery.
Whoa.
Stephen King.
More Stephen King.
He's everywhere. I've watched
What's
too
with that
many
guy?
Stephen King movies. And yeah.
Go get a job,
maybe Pet Cemetery is just kind of a lame story. This was kind of lame.
Isn't it like whatever you bury in the pet cemetery comes back to life?
No, Revy, it's got nothing to do with the Pet Cemetery.
I thought that was the premise. I don't know.
It's whatever you bury at a completely unrelated, very far away cemetery that comes back to life.
That's funny.
Oh, not a single thing is buried in the Pet Cemetery in the movie. And that's very confusing to me. But beyond that, it's just riddled with the problems that you often get when King himself tackles a screenplay. It's just boring, like just straight up. And I think the performances are actually really great in this. There's some really memorable actors. Dale Midkiff is really great in this, and Fred Gwynn, I guess is how you'd say his name. They're both like really great. I think they're really engaging to watch. I love what they're doing, but it's just hands down a boring movie. It is written in a boring manner. It's too long, and the plot just doesn't like what is the plot? I don't get it. Like, I understand why it progresses the way that it progresses. It's not like dumb in that aspect, but it seems kind of pointless and meandery and doesn't set up anything in that scary of a way. And I don't know. It's not my cup of tea, but it's still pretty decent. Like, it's not bad. I've just been kind of like, I don't know. I get very disappointed by King adaptations that aren't good, because I think King is a really interesting writer at the end of the day.
Yes.
I love the concept of so much of his work, and I was really looking forward to Pet Sematary because the concept was really interesting to me. And
That's how he sells books, Mike.
I think it was very boring, but still decent. I give it a 3 out of 5.
Fair enough. Well, you know, something that is interesting in concept and execution, Mike. The movie we watched called Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space, baby. We watched it that night.
Bit of a cult classic. I feel like it was kind of like genetically engineered to be a cult classic, right? You know?
Wild movie.
Like the passion project of like a puppeteer.
Stephen Chiodo, I think is how you'd say his name. Puppeteer who'd worked on a bunch of stuff. He made a movie.
He directed a movie.
That was just, pretty sure it was just for him to have fun with puppets.
Right. I was about to say he co-wrote it with, like, I guess probably his family members, because Charles Chiodo and Edward Chiodo are the co-writers of it.
Watched it. It was just like him and his brothers. Being like,
But it's like, I don't know, Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
The Chiodo brothers.
That's so funny.
Stephen, Charles, and Edward.
But yeah, like Killer Clowns, it feels like just a dumb passion project. Not that like not in a degrading way, but like a silly passion project.
Interesting. They're all in production design and puppeting
cool.
and stuff.
That explains why the movie looks so freaking good. Like I'm sure it didn't have like a huge budget, but like they spent it in the right places, man.
Yeah, this is great. It's so fun and goofy. There are some complaints that I have about the movie. I don't think it takes things as far as it could.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's always as interesting as it could be because of that. Like, I get kind of bored at certain parts of it.
Maybe because it doesn't have a main character.
It doesn't have a main
or much
character.
of a plot.
And it's not often that scary.
Yeah.
But that may make it sound like a bad movie, but it's not. It's great. You guys gotta watch.
It's so funny. Oh my god.
It's really funny. It's really creative. The characters that are there are all like cartoonishly weird in a fun way. It's I don't know. It's pretty great, pretty memorable.
Yeah, I think it works as a really fun riff on like 80s movies, like 80s horror remakes that were coming out at the time. Like that's a really fun lens to view it through, I think, because like you have all like these weird like small town archetypes with like these just like absolutely off the walls like cartoonish clown killer clowns,
I love the killer clowns themselves.
Yeah, and they're
so
awesome.
Good.
And like I don't know, it's just a blast. Anytime the clowns are doing their little bits, I was having a good time.
I love the what are their names? The brothers in the movie.
The ice cream drivers.
The Terenzi brothers.
Yeah.
I love the way they're written, how they just like can't help but do comedy buffoonery. They're in like the most dangerous situation and they just can't help be little cartoon characters, and that's amazing.
Yeah, it just feels like a really sincere passion project, and like it's so funny. I have an endless love for Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I'm so glad I just like blind bought it at a used movie store. I give it a 5 out of 5.
I give it a 4 out of 5.
Beautiful movie.
Then on the 6th, we watched Happy Death Day to You.
Yes.
Which I don't have much to say about. It was
it's a sequel.
It's like Happy Death Day, but it's not a horror movie. It's a weird comedy, time travel movie that kind of sucks.
It's like a multiverse comedy. It's so weird.
I didn't really like what it was doing. I didn't like the characters nearly as much. I don't think they have nearly as strong of characterization, which allows them to be not nearly as funny as they were even in the first movie, which was less focused on comedy. The plot's really muddled, and nothing really emotionally works well for it with me. So I was not a big fan. Yeah,
no, it's weird because it's like the first movie is very much just like meant to be a comedic time like loop slasher. Like that is what it is. Like it's very much on the label exactly what it set out to be. And Happy Death Day to You is like this weird multiverse dramedy,
right?
And it like the emotional core just does not land the way I want it to, and it like also for me to be like totally sold on it.
And again, like all bad sequels, it steps on the toes of the emotional core and structure of the original movie.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a very funny like way to go about writing a sequel to Happy Death Day, and I kind of admire like its pure just like insaneness. But like I don't know, it's not that interesting or all that funny all the time, so like it ends up just being kind of like a flat line of a experience.
I was about to say the funniest joke in the whole movie is reused from the first movie. So
but yeah, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I had a good time with it. Like I would watch it again, but it's not, I would just, if I was in the mood to watch it, I'd probably just turn on the first one again.
I gave it a 2.5. I wouldn't want to watch this again.
Oh, it's a shame.
Then on the 7th, which was my birthday.
Happy death day.
Oh,
to you, my.
Oh no. I woke up that morning and watched Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, which is one of my all-time favorite Scooby-Doo movies.
I still haven't seen it.
I also think the most overtly Halloween Scooby-Doo movie, in my opinion.
Not Goblin King.
Outside of the ones like, I don't know, it's more Halloween to me, even though it doesn't take place on Halloween, than stuff like Goblin King, or even like Trick or Treat, or there's another one.
Oh, I love Trick or Treat.
There's another one that takes place like directly on Halloween.
Yeah.
But none of those like capture what I think of when I think of Halloween quite as well as Witch's Ghost, which is like set in, I think they go to Massachusetts and
go to Boston,
and it's all fall and it's all set up for like I don't know. It's very what I think of like, I don't know, like childhood kind of Halloween movie, like cool. Even like the atmosphere of something like Paranorman and something like that. That's just very like, that's like a Halloween.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. I love it. It's one of the Jim Sennstrom Scooby-Doo movies, nice. And he's just the best. Any of his movies rock. It's got a very unique animation style. It's got a really fun plot. It's got Tim Curry. Shout out to Tim Curry.
Hey.
And yeah, it's really great. I don't want to elaborate too far because I want to go to sleep. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5.
Very cool. Later that day, we watched Cowboy Bebop,
the movie, which Cowboy Bebop is another one of my all-time favorite shows, arguably maybe my favorite show. And I had only watched the movie recently. You may have heard me talk about it a bit ago, but I had to watch the dub because the dub is the only thing ever streaming. And we stopped at a random Second and Charles on the way back from getting a tattoo that I got. And we found Cowboy Bebop the movie on Blu-ray.
Crazy. So yeah, we watched it. And I have never seen the show outside of like half of one episode, I think. And the movie was fun.
I think the movie is a really fun like romp with the characters. I don't think it's nearly as good as the show by any means. I actually really agree with Shafrillis's review on this, where he just is like, there's like 15 episodes that would have had way better feature-length stories that you could pull out of them than this movie is.
It kind of feels like you could do this in like a 2-parter or even just one episode of a show.
Whereas there are episodes in the actual show itself where you could pull out like a lot more interesting stuff, and it feels like, oh, you're almost like, oh no. But it's great getting to spend time with these characters.
More. If anything, this sold me on like watching the show, like, because now I want to see what it's like. Because this is like the characters are really the biggest like selling point to me here. Like, it looks pretty great, like it's really well crafted animation, and it's generally a fun time, but like it's not the tightest script in the world. But it is fun.
It's too long.
It is too long. But I had a good time watching it, and it was cool. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I also gave it a 4 out of 5.
Very nice.
Then on the 8th, we watched the interesting little low-budget found footage movie As Above, So Below.
Whoa.
Which is like really cool, but also way less cool than it feels like it should be.
Yeah, I described it in my review as Falusi meets National Treasure via found footage, like Lucio Falusi. Which, you know, I talked about his Gates to Hell trilogy a little while ago when I finished it, and it very much feels like in line with that mythos. But it's very weird. I like it a lot, though.
Yeah, I really admire what this movie is doing. It's very much up my alley in almost everything that it's doing. But you feel like it really like stretched the writers and the budget thin by the end.
This could have been like 40 minutes long.
Not only could it have been like 40 minutes long, but like it could have been a lot better with more drafts. There's just so much that feels disappointing by the end. A lot of things that are presented but never picked back up on.
That really is the biggest like disappointment of As Above, So Below, is like, by the time you get to like the finale, you're like, yeah, man, let's see what it has to offer. And then it's just kind of like basic.
Yeah, there's still some really fun creative stuff for what they could do. Like I said, you can kind of see their budget start to run thin with even some of the effects they're going for by the end, some of the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So you can tell that they can't take it as far as they wanted to. But even then, like, the writing could have just been better with it. There's some pretty, like, hilariously goofy stuff that happens by the end with the main MacGuffin of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's just weird.
It's not as scary as I want it to be, you know?
Yeah. I not to advocate for remakes, but it really makes me wish that this was just like do it again, but better.
That kind of, this actually, I would actually really benefit from a remake, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely love the concept of As Above, So Below. I can, do you want to give me a budget? You want to give me some money? I'll make As Above, So Below. Because it is absolutely up my alley in what it's doing, and I just want it to just want it to hit its punches stronger. I want it to land better.
I just wanted to give a shout because it very much reminded me of the segment To Hell and Back from whichever VHS movie I watched. I don't remember. VHS 99. Very similar in quality and in enjoyment. So,
but I commend As Above, So Below for what it's doing, and I enjoy it. I think it's a fun movie.
The characters are fun. The lore and like actual crafting of it, especially in like the middle, is really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's generally spooky. I had a good time watching it.
Yeah, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
I gave it a 3 out of 5. It's pretty fun.
And then we watched Oh wait, no. Darn it, you watched something else.
I'm sorry. There was a new slasher movie that came out on Amazon Prime.
I said, it's going to be bad.
And I don't know. I really want, like, I feel like Scream kind of spoiled me because that was like the first slasher I ever watched. And now I expect like every slasher movie to be Scream. And that's just not going to happen. But Totally Killer is the name of the movie. It came out this year. And it's fine. It's a fine movie. It's a time travel slasher comedy, and it delivers decently on the slasher part and kind of flops as a time travel comedy. Like, I don't know. I didn't find it that funny. And like a lot of the humor just doesn't really work in my eyes. And like, I don't know, whenever it's doing like fun slasher set pieces, I was like, yeah, man, this is awesome. Like there's this really great scene where like all the characters, like they're all high schoolers. They go out to like have a Sweet 16 party at a cabin, and they're all getting high. And there's like some really, really fun like horror antics during that part. Like the cabin is like the standout set piece in my mind. And like that scene rocks. If the whole movie was just stuff like that, I would be like, yes, man, this is like the best thing ever. But like, I don't know, it gets really dragged down by like all of its weird like A plot, B plot because of its time travel stuff. It has like it play out like parallel, and it really drags down a lot of the scene to scene tension.
I don't know, Ravi. I heard the premise of this and I was like, wow, that sounds bad and annoying.
No,
so I didn't watch it.
I don't know. I had hope. I had hope that I would like it because I really like slashers as like a genre, and I think you can explore so many cool things about filmmaking itself in a slasher movie.
Yes, but as a rule, I think most time travel movies suck.
Yeah, no, this one really trips when it comes to being a time travel movie. Like it makes all of the drama of everything just kind of fall flat, and it makes the reveal at the end so silly and cringeworthy. And that's honestly the last like 10 minutes of the worst part of this movie. But like, I don't know, it's the middle part is really fun, like, and the cast is pretty fun. It was cool seeing Olivia Holt here. Like I grew up watching her and Kicking It. So it's kind of funny to see her like in a slasher movie. So I don't know. I had fun with the cast. Whenever it was doing like cool slasher stuff, I was having a good time. But it compared itself directly to Scream and then had the audacity to not be like the best movie ever. But yeah, I don't know. Generally, I think I would give it another go sometime, like if I just got in the mood for it. But I don't know. It's not something I would necessarily recommend just because it feels very amateurish. And I mean, like, this is a very new director. Like, they've only done one other movie, and it's not a horror movie. So I don't know. Yeah, it feels amateurish and falls into a lot of the like kind of insufferable trappings that streaming service original movies can fall into. But I don't know. I had a generally fun time with it. So I don't know. I have a very mixed feeling towards Totally Killer, but I gave it a 3 out of 5. So
there you go.
And then we watched Hotel Transylvania.
We watched Hotel Transylvania.
And then we came down here to record
the
episode.
To record the episode.
Which you've now listened to in its entirety almost.
Almost. You're so close.
Indeed.
Just like we are.
Well, yeah, in proximity. We're in the studio, Micah.
Too true.
During spooky season, nonetheless. It's kind of dark in here. But yeah, thanks for listening to the whole episode. If you made it to the end, go check out our Letterboxd account. Where
go check out the HQ page.
Yeah,
Recently logged on Letterboxd. Go watch a good movie. Go watch a spooky movie. Go watch a good Scooby-Doo movie. If you're okay with the content in it, I cannot recommend enough Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Yeah, please do a parental guide check before you watch that show. But I do think it's very good.
But yeah, go watch something good and I don't know, tell somebody about it and live your life. I don't care.
And we'll see you next week for our discussion on the next Scream movie. Whoa.